right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I hope you guys had a good holiday break and you guys are having a good new year so far. We got a couple of interesting stories to talk about today. The first story that I've got for you guys, this is the first video of 2023, so this is the first story of 2023. And hopefully we have an exciting year of bodybuilding ahead of us. The first story, we got some much clearer footage of the arrival of Hadi Choopan to his home country, Iran. That really gives us a much clearer perspective of how big the crowd that arrived to greet him at the airport really was. So really briefly, this is the caption that Hadi Choopan had on the post. He says, "With the utmost respect and politeness and in full humility and devotion, I thank each and every one of my Lord's friends, kind people, respected athletes, and dear respected heroes. And I sincerely declare that they have given and chosen a soldier to this border." So it's kind of a rough translation. And he says in the second part of that caption that he is apologetic that he can't meet every single person. And that's kind of what he's trying to express in that caption. And in this footage, again, you get a better idea of the crowd that gathered outside of the airport, which looks to be thousands of people. And again, I think this is a great testament to the international fandom that bodybuilding has that I don't think it really acknowledge often enough. It's not just an English-speaking fan base. It's a tremendous international fan base. And that's why when people say that Hadi Choopan might not necessarily be the best ambassador for the Olympia title, I don't agree with that. I'll be curious to see what he does do with that title, but this massive fan base that he has overseas, to them, he's a fantastic ambassador for these other cultures. And I honestly think it's more exciting to see guys like Ramy and Hadi win with these totally different fan bases and really expanding the reach of the Mr. Olympia title and the IFBB to these other countries. All right, guys, today's video is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan Law Firm. Did you know that in 2020 there were over 5 million car crashes? That's more than 15,000 a day and 600 per hour. Those in an accident can be entitled to more than you think, and that's where Morgan & Morgan comes into play. When you're injured, you deserve compensation, and the size of your law firm matters. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with over 800 lawyers in 100 offices nationwide. The best part is Morgan & Morgan's fee is completely free unless they win your case. Over 3 million people trust Morgan & Morgan, and getting started is easy. You can check out the link in the comment section below for more information. Now, next up in the news, I want to talk a little bit about the Mr. Olympia and the overall production and flow of the show. This is something I've seen a lot of people be very critical of, including Jay Cutler. I've seen several coaches have issues with the way the show was run as far as the length that the athletes themselves, in particular men's open bodybuilding, were expected to just be backstage or be at the venue and wait around for their turn to go on stage. But James Hollingshead on this clip from Centopani's Circles, this was the first time that I had seen one of the men's open guys that actually competed in this year's Olympia actually speak out and say something. I thought that was really good that he did that, because this is something I was wondering about from their perspective. How did they feel, the athletes that were actually backstage waiting to go out? How did they feel waiting all night for this, what seemed to be one of the longest Olympias that I can remember? Each night, Friday and Saturday, the show ran for about 6 hours. And each night, the men's open bodybuilders were expected to go on last. Friday night for prejudging, and Saturday night for finals, which meant they had to wait around for the entirety of every other division each night, which again ran for about 6 hours Eastern time. I believe the open bodybuilders went out between 1 and 2 in the morning was when they started their routines. Particularly prejudging, I think, was later. But James, I think, and I'm going to play you guys this clip, I think it took some balls for him to actually say what he said. And I hope that someone from the Olympia listens to this from the athlete's perspective, not just from the fans' perspective, because I do feel like they did listen to the fans and some of the athletes in regards to the overall presentation of the stage. I think a lot of people had complaints about last year's lighting, the backdrop, the laser beams, really aggressive graphics on the screen behind the athletes, distracting from the photography and videography work, distracting from the actual physique that you're looking at on stage. And I do feel like they heard that criticism this year, and they toned down their production as far as the lighting, the crazy graphics, the laser beams. Some of those elements were still there, but you could tell they listened and they removed a lot of those elements. So hopefully they hear this criticism about the length of the show, because it's not just James. I'm hearing a lot of people say this, and like I said, Jay Cutler kind of echoed this on his Cutler cast, saying how ridiculous it was that these guys were expected to wait around backstage for 6 hours, and the fact that apparently they had to go outside of the venue to get into the backstage area. So they had to go from the inside to where it was freezing cold outside and then back inside to get to that backstage area. And apparently it was very overcrowded. It was very, according to Jay, it was a mess. But let's listen to what James Hollingshead had to say about the experience backstage.
All the wise people say that the show is the physiques, and that's I think that's true. And it gets to a point where they're focusing too much on the production, and then the physiques suffer because of things running late or being cramped, no space. It's like the physiques are secondary, and then we get targeted for not coming on stage looking our best. But little do they know we had to walk outside in the freezing cold to get to where we have to get to backstage, and then basically just stand around freezing your bollocks off, trying to get ready to go on stage, but you can't hear each other talk, you can't see nothing because it's dark. Like, this is well lit, spacious, just looks like a totally different experience. Oh man, there's something we need to do, and I hope I wish I could help in some way. Anyway, just leaving that there, just because watching this video is kind of a reminder that I wanted to discuss that, and after seeing what your video title was about the Olympia, I thought I'd bring that up.
So I was actually really glad to hear this perspective, because this is something I was wondering throughout the duration of the night, is as we saw all these divisions in the length of this show just kind of dragged on, I was wondering how it would affect the physiques themselves, and if it did affect any of the athletes. Did they fade while they were waiting backstage? Were they peaked, maybe 6 hours before they were supposed to step on stage, but over the course of, the cortisol and the stress and just the time and maybe water retention, being cramped backstage for that amount of time, could that have really blown some of these physiques that we saw? I think while we saw a lot of amazing physiques where a lot of guys were really on, there were some guys that were off that surprised me that they were off. And could this have been a contributing factor? Were they not expecting to be waiting around backstage in a cramped, pump-up room for 6 hours? And James, I think, makes a really fair point, and he does attribute, this could possibly be a reason why some of us looked off. And he also does point out what I feel like a lot of people have echoed over the past couple of years, especially, with this increased focus on the production and the lighting and all these crazy graphics and them talking about how much money they spent on the stage. Shouldn't the focus of the competition be the physiques in the athletes? And that's what James is pointing out here, not the production, because really, who is that for? All this extra production value, bigger screens, brighter lights, laser beams, crazier graphics. I honestly don't think that most people watching, most bodybuilding fans, myself included, care for all that extra stuff, or need it, or want it, or could care if it was gone. I think what a lot of people don't realize is these big LED boards that they put up on the stage behind the athletes, these cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to rent, to maintain, to staff. You've got to hire people to run these boards, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that could go to the prize money, it could go to anything else. And I literally don't think, aside from the sponsors being on there, because the sponsors are paying to be visible in the pictures and the videos and the live stream, that's why they want to be on that backdrop, and that's a source of income. I understand that aspect. But aside from that, I really don't think if they bought a couple $100 plain black cloth as a background, as opposed to a several $100,000 LED board, and they had good lighting, maybe hire a lighting guy for a couple $1,000 if it's even that expensive, I don't think the viewing experience would be hurt one bit if they just had a plain black cloth as the backdrop to like a real bodybuilding fan. Would they care? No. No lasers, no smoke machines, no LED boards, no crazy lights. I don't think that enhances the viewing experience, for me at least, not one bit. I think good commentary like they had. I think Phil Heath did a really good job on the commentary, by the way. I think good commentary, good backdrop, good lighting, and a smooth HD stream. If you have all those elements, I think people are happy, and I think all the extra stuff doesn't really add much to it. But even with this James Hollingshead conversation, all those things are kind of an extra part of the conversation, because he's more talking about the length of the show, the overall production. But let me know your thoughts on this year's Olympia. How do you think it was ran? Do you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? Do you think the production was overdone? What was your overall opinion of the Olympia live stream this year? And if you were there in attendance, what was your overall opinion of the venue, the experience in person? I'm very curious to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below, and what your thoughts are on James Hollingshead's backstage experience. Now, next up in the news, William Bonac's first major post after his Olympia placing, where he took 9th place. I thought this was interesting. He says, check out my abs and thighs transformation from the Mr. Olympia 2022 prep, counting the weeks backwards, slide to the left. As most know, my ab shot was always an issue due to a hernia. Despite that, we still managed to practice and train the abs to a presentable degree. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to present the physique that we had in mind. Take a look and let us know what your thoughts are. And if you have any tips or critiques, shoot it in the comment section. So one of the things that I kind of noticed with Bonac, and really my only tip or critique would be, I actually prefer his front-on abs and thighs to the side shot, because he's one of the guys, whenever they call out the abs and thighs pose, he seems to tend to go to that side kind of variation of a most muscular in an abs and thighs rather than a front-on. And I don't really know what the reason for that necessarily is, but looking at these shots, I actually prefer the straight-on abs and thighs, and I think when he doesn't hit it that way, it's not doing himself any favors. That's my one, I guess, criticism. I think he looks good in both because he shows off his obliques and his serratus really well in that side shot, and then he kind of takes his other arm to cover his midsection where it might not look the most flattering in that angle. He covers it with his fist and his arm there. But the front on, I think he actually does have a good V-taper. He's got a pretty good balance, and I don't know if maybe he can't hold that pose for very long, and maybe that's the reason why he doesn't hit it straight on normally. But I actually prefer it straight on, so that would be my comment on that. And I was curious for you guys in the comment section below to let me know your opinion, or let Bonac know your opinion on his abs and thighs shot. What would your critique be, and why do you think Bonac wound up placing where he placed at the Olympia? I was actually surprised that Bonac placed as low as he did. In my prediction video, I had Bonac taking 8th, and even in that prediction video, I said I feel like that's an extremely low placing for me to have Bonac, and that was the placing that I felt actually the least confident about in my predictions. But Bonac wound up placing 9th, which was even lower than I placed him, and I think I was one of the people that really predicted him placing the lowest, so I was kind of shocked that he placed as low as he did. You know, considering the fact that we saw how good he looked at the Arnold Classic last year, we saw how good he looked at the Boston Pro immediately following the Arnold Classic. And then in his victory speech at the Boston Pro, he talked about his legs, he talked about his gyno, he said he's going to get surgery to fix these issues that people are pointing out. And to me, it looked like he actually did fix those issues. The gyno didn't look bad or really noticeable at all. His legs looked more balanced. The main thing that I really noticed was there were several shots, particularly from the side, where I feel like he lost control of his midsection a little bit. I thought his conditioning was good, but not 100% crisp Bonac that we've seen in the past. He lacked a little bit of pop to me, a little bit of like that extra oomph to his physique just wasn't really there. And there was a little bit of midsection distension that I noticed, and those were the two main things. But overall, you know, he didn't look bad. So the question going forward for Bonac is, what can he do to continue to improve? Because last year he was 6th, and he moved all the way to 9th this year. So the question now is, how can he, if he can, avoid that happening again at the next Olympia? How does he avoid going from 9th to 12th and maybe make it going from 9th back into the top 6? What does Bonac need to improve upon to really insert himself back in that conversation? I think he just needs to come in a little bit sharper and a little bit tighter in the midsection, a little bit more midsection control, especially in some of those side shots. And we'd be looking at, you know, the Bonac that we're used to seeing if he was just a little bit sharper and, like I said, a little bit more control over that midsection. And maybe, like he suggests in that post, maybe changing up how he poses a little bit. Maybe he doesn't, maybe hitting that side variation of the abs and thighs is not the best move for him. That's entirely possible as well. And the final story that I have for you guys today, yet again, kind of another hint that Phil Heath might be making a comeback in 2023 on the Cutler cast, a really good podcast, one of the few bodybuilding podcasts I watch, by the way. Episode 56 posted today, but obviously recorded prior to the Olympia this past year. It is titled Phil Heath, I Will Come Back. So in this episode, they discuss Phil's career, they talk about his legacy, and they get to the question, and you still don't really get a direct answer from Phil. But listening to this, and especially looking at the aptly title of the episode, I Will Come Back, it certainly sounds like it is not off the table for Phil to compete one more time. And he even specifically said at one point, if I were to come back at the Arnold or something like that. That was one of the quotes from the episode that I think intrigued me because, like I said, one of the few titles that Phil had not won is the Arnold Classic Ohio. He's competed there, but he's never won an Arnold Ohio title, and I think that is still a title that he could have a shot at. I would love to see Phil come back, and I think it would make things very interesting, but as much as I want to see Phil come back, I'm still not entirely convinced that after seeing what happened in 2020, that if Phil does come back, I'm not entirely convinced he can get that 8th Olympia title. Because in 2020, he didn't look like the same Phil Heath. Something was still off. And if he comes back, I guess there is still this chance that he comes back better and he comes back fixed. But there's not a lot of likelihood to that. It's not something that typically happens. You don't see a reigning Mr. Olympia take an extended break from competing when we're talking about years and then come back and look better than ever, come back, look improved. They generally come back and look worse as they get older, as they take time off. You're generally not going to see someone do a complete 180 and come back way better than the last time we saw them on stage. Just generally, it doesn't happen. It could happen, but I do think it's unlikely. However, if we talk about Phil coming in good enough to win an Arnold Classic, I think that's a much more likely scenario, and it would be a good way for him to go out really with a bang. Because he's filming this documentary, he hasn't officially announced his retirement. He's not going out right now on a victory. He could have his chance to have a victory speech, have a retirement speech at the Arnold. It'd be kind of a good cap to his career because his biggest rival, I would say, was Kai Green. And Kai Green is a guy that has won the Arnold Classic multiple times, a title that Phil has yet to have captured. And for him to, like, if that were his last show and he were to capture that title as like his swan song, something that his rival is really, it was really Kai Green's biggest accomplishment outside of being runner-up to Phil, was winning the Arnold. And I'm not sure, I don't think there was ever a time that Kai beat Phil outside of the Arnold Classic that Kai beat Phil. I could be wrong. But you guys got to remember, Kai did beat Phil at the 2010 Arnold Classic. Now, that being said, I don't think Phil would be ready to jump in this year's Arnold Classic, maybe next year's. But that, to me, is still what I think would be the coolest career move if Phil were to make a comeback. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Will we ever see Phil come back? It seems to be something that's been weighing on his mind. Make sure you leave a like on the video. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. Click the bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.